Welcome to the Deep in State. I'm your host, Nick Hawks. On today's episode, we have Dmitry, the founder and technical lead over at Codex. This episode is sponsored by Gold Hawks and Associates, the most experienced DePIN consultancy in the space. We help projects develop strategy, messaging, and token incentives. We'll have a little bit more on us later in the show. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, smash the bell, all the things that help us keep bringing great guests like Dmitry to you. Dmitry, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn about Codex. I was watching a presentation that you guys did midsummer of 2024, and it seems pretty cool. But before maybe we get to Codex, tell me a little bit about yourself. As who are you, and what was your path to Codex?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been doing software engineering for well over 20 years now, and I kind of got into working on open source and peer-to-peer systems and stuff like that back in 2015, 2016, and eventually gravitated towards blockchains, and I worked on libp2p, for example. I wrote an implementation in Newman for libp2p. It was used in one of the 4 clients that were released for the Beacon chain back in 2021, I believe. So I've been doing stuff related to Ethereum, peer-to-peer, and stuff like that. Recently, I've participated in some task research as well with the rest of the team. Data availability sampling in Ethereum.
Pretty cool. So software nerd, you kind of understand all of the, like how the internet generally works on the, like the storage and data transfer side. And then what brought you to Codex, or what's the, I mean, you're a founder there, is what brought you to start it?
Yeah. So I think one of the fundamental problems has always been storage, right? The decentralized storage, for one. And I can remember that one of the very cool uses that everyone thought was going to be very possible when peer-to-peer networks kind of emerged and everyone was using file sharing protocols and things like that, that you could use that for storing data, right? That was sort of like assumed in. And for a very long time, people thought, well, okay, if we introduce incentives, then you could get this thing to store data for me, right? And probably do useful things, more useful than just sending a file across the network. Sure. Turns out that first of all, that wasn't necessarily possible back then. This was the early 2000s. We didn't have decentralized payments. And second is that incentives are not enough to do that. So like I've been thinking about this problem for a while, and I always wanted to tackle it. And so that kind of sort of organically, became this project, essentially, Codex. Yeah.
Got it. And so if I'm thinking of Codex, let's define it. I think the easy way is that it's Google Drive for Web3, but maybe you can unpack that a little bit and lay it out for folks so that we get a little more detail than my kind of guessing at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I call it like a general storage layer for a general decentralized storage layer, right? You can use it to store, arbitrary files, arbitrary data, whatever you want, really, and the network will store it for you, will keep it for you for the amount of time that you paid for, essentially. So you could think of it as renting some storage from the network, or that's probably a good description of it.
Okay. And then there are currently options that exist. I mean, I use Google Drive for what I'm doing all the time. How is Codex better than that? Why should I switch over?
Yeah, so one of the problems with systems like that, and it's probably even more evident nowadays, is that you're essentially giving your data to a company, right? To a centralized organization, and they're subject to all sorts of pressure, external. They could, the data that you want to store, there might be censored. You could lose your account for no reason, really, as well. I mean, that has happened in the past. You're also very vulnerable to leaks and hacks and stuff like that. So that's also very a regular occurrence, unfortunately. Using a decentralized system provides you resistance to that. It makes your data more. So first of all, these types of networks, they're more censorship resistant by default. They're also very resilient to all sorts of events like global events, natural disasters, etc. So there are clear advantages to these types of systems to trust them with your data. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense to me. I can see that being a decent pitch. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll talk about today's sponsor, Goldhawks and Associates. We're a DePIN consultant firm helping projects with strategy, messaging, and token incentives. We run a blog for founders over at goldandhawks.com, produce this show, and most importantly, work with the core teams and communities of your favorite projects in the space to ensure tokenomics and incentives are fully aligned to build out some of the most badass physical infrastructure networks in the world. If your project needs help with any of these, check out goldandhawks.com. Okay, Dmitry, so if we come back to this idea of this is a decentralized storage play where you're saying, hey, we're going to spread this out. It's going to be censorship resistant. Google's not going to be spying on you because it's all this information is, I guess, disaggregated. It's all over the place in shards is my guess. Yep. Is there a pricing benefit as well? Or is it about the same as if I'm going to use one of the normal Web 2 variants?
Right. So right now it's a little bit less competitive in terms of pricing because but we are working to improve that, and we're probably going to be matching that pricing or beating it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And you've got extra benefits. You got these benefits of the privacy and the ability to make sure that I can continue to access my information, even if some government or other entity doesn't want me to. So that seems
absolutely
pretty fair. How do people participate? Is this something that you can only do if you own a data center? Can I do it with a Raspberry Pi in my closet? Like, how do I get in and work and help out with this thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our goal is to make this run on low powered hardware. Essentially, a Raspberry Pi would be definitely something that you could potentially use. So and if you have a data center, that also goes. I mean, we have a couple of people right now which have medium-sized data centers participating and providing storage to the network. So you could run it on a very low-powered device, or you could run it on a data center.
Got it. And are there different incentives? Let's say I've got a fiber connection versus I don't know if anyone's going to have a dial-up connection, but slower speed, faster speed, better latency, worse latency, more storage, less storage, are all those kind of levers that you push, or is it just a straight across token reward for providing some service to the network?
Right now, it's all the same. It would be we're definitely trying to incorporate all of that into the pricing mechanisms, but it's very hard to prove a lot of these things, right? So to do this, it's actually very easy to fake, for example, that you have this type of latency, and then introducing all sorts of mechanisms to sort of prevent that from happening. It's quite a challenge. So right now we're focusing on only providing across the board durability, independent of what type of device you're running, but incorporating all of these elements would definitely be very beneficial, and we're thinking about it.
Okay, cool. It sounds like it's a pretty sensible approach where you're just starting off saying like, hey, how does this work? How do we get the basics down? And then as you start to ramp up the offerings, you make sure that you're also rewarding people based on what they're doing, but not jumping the gun there. Okay. Last question. At Golden Hawks, we always preach the importance of story structure and catalyst. Obviously, the DePIN space and crypto in general is in flux right now. It sure looks like it's going to be on a bull run, but you can't really talk about that in general. What do you think will be the catalyst here for Codex that takes it from where it is to where it's going? Is there kind of a breaking point, or a point where you guys are saying, hey, when this happens, we are full go, or when this happens, then we kind of, the doors open up? Is there a thing you're thinking about there?
Yeah, I think the door is already open. In general, I think everyone is kind of waiting for a working and practical storage solution, right? Every single Web3 application, for example, or is waiting for a solution that's gonna be suitable for essentially being able to not rely on say AWS anymore, right? Because that is the reality right now, unfortunately. So I think the demand is there. I think it's just a matter of building a product that actually satisfies all the requirements. Yeah.
Okay. Rad. And where can people go to find more? Is it codex.storage? Is there anything else?
Codex.storage. You can navigate to the docs there. Read our white paper. We also just released the testnet. But yeah, Codex.storage is the place to go.
Cool. Super exciting.
Yeah.
Join the Discord. Always like get on the Discord, see what's going on, cruise in, see if you like the vibe, see if you think you can do it, and participate. Cool. Dmitry, thanks so much for making the time. I know you're super busy as a founder. Really appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit about Codex.
Thanks for having me.